Welcome back to the deep dive. We're looking at a stack of notes today that, honestly, it feels a bit like trying to read a map of the universe while it's still being drawn.
That's probably the most accurate description you could give.
Mm.
It's dense material.
It is, but it's trying to solve a very specific, very relatable glitch. You know that feeling when you're sitting on your couch, perfectly safe, maybe drinking some tea, but emotionally, you are fighting a war.
Right.
Or intellectually, you're just completely exhausted even though you haven't moved all day.
Right. The hardware's fine. You're safe on the couch, but the software's crashing.
See, usually we just say, I'm stressed, and leave it at that. But the material we're covering today, based on vector field theory and actualism, says, no, you aren't just stressed. You are having a layer conflict.
It proposes that reality isn't one thing. It's a stack, a seven-dimensional architecture.
Which sounds incredibly sci-fi. But the analogy the source uses is surprisingly grounded. It compares human existence to a computer system.
It's a great way to visualize it. You have your hardware, the chips and wires.
Mm-hmm.
You have the operating system. And then you have the user interface, which is where you actually experience the meaning of what's on the screen.
And the argument here is that if you try to fix a software bug with a screwdriver, if you try to fix an emotional problem with purely physical solutions, you're going to fail.
Every single time. Because you're operating on the wrong plane.
You're trying to patch the code by hitting the computer case.
Exactly.
So let's build this map. We have 7 planes. And according to the notes, we don't start at the bottom with the physical stuff. We start at the very top. Plane 1. The metaphysical plane.
This is the alpha. The source defines this layer as the answer to the question, who?
The who.
It's the realm of will and direction. The text uses the term sokic vector, but, don't let the jargon throw you. Think of this as the impulse to move.
But I got stuck on a detail here. The notes say this layer doesn't sense the outside world. That seems counterintuitive. How can you be the driver if you can't see the road?
Because at this level, strictly speaking, there is no road yet. There is only the driver. It operates in what's called directional time.
Okay.
It's pure agency. It's that part of you that decides, I am going to go, before you've even decided where or how.
So it's the ignition spark.
Exactly. It is the I am. But an ignition spark needs an engine, and, well, a driver needs a reason to drive. Which drops us down to plane 2, the lyrical plane.
I really like this concept, the lyrical plane. It answers the question, why?
This is the story layer, the realm of meaning and resonance. In this plane, things aren't connected by sequence, like A happened, then B happened. They're connected by narrative.
The sources mention non-Euclidean time here. Now, I know Euclidean geometry is all about flat surfaces, straight lines. So what is non-Euclidean time?
Think about your favorite song or a really powerful memory. It might only last 3 minutes on a clock, right?
Sure.
But internally, it feels huge. It has weight. That's lyrical time. It's measured in resonance, not in seconds.
It's like how a boring meeting can feel like it lasts 3 years. But a great dinner with friends is just over in a blink.
That's it. The why, changing the time. You are experiencing the event based on its meaning, not its duration.
Okay, so we have the will, the who, and the story, the why. But we can't just live in stories. Things actually have to happen in order.
Which brings us to plane 3, the historical plane. This answers, what is the cause?
This feels more like the time we're used to.
Yes, this is linear time, sequence, causality, the log of afters and befores. The source calls this the guardian of destiny.
Guardian of destiny, that's a bit dramatic.
Well, think of it as the system administrator, or maybe the accountant. Its whole job is to maintain the integrity of the timeline. It ensures that you can't have the effect before the cause.
It keeps the files in order.
That's it.
Yeah.
So plane 2 is the feeling of the story.
Yeah.
But plane 3 is the police officer making sure events actually happen in a straight line.
Correct. So that's your top 3, your upper triangle, if you will. The who, the why, and the cause.
Now we have to cross the bridge into the stuff we can actually touch.
Moving down the stack, plane 4. This one is called the possible plane, and it answers the question, what?
Specifically, what could be? This is the realm of faith and probability.
The notes here use a phrase I really didn't expect to see in a heavy philosophical text, cartoon physics.
It's the perfect example. Think of Wile E. Coyote in the old Roadrunner cartoons.
Okay, yeah. He runs off the cliff, he keeps running, he doesn't fall.
Not until he looks down. Why? Because in the possible plane, the laws of physics they're suspended. It operates on faith, or what the source calls the suspension of law.
So,
The nuance here is fascinating. It says this plane involves treating future probability as present certainty.
so as long as he believes the ground is there, as long as he maintains that probability, he literally is walking on air.
In a sense, yes, that is the power of the possible. It's fluid. It operates by the rules of imagination.
Yeah.
But inevitably, he looks down.
And the probability collapses.
And gravity enters the chat. Which brings us to plane 5, the physical plane,
The anchor.
the realm of matter and distance. This answers the question, where?
This is what we usually think of as real, isn't it? The table, this microphone, the ground rushing up to meet Wile E. Coyote.
Exactly. It deals in Euclidean space standard geometry. Unlike the possible plane, which is fluid and imaginative, the physical plane is described as rigid and opaque.
It holds the entity in specific space-time coordinates.
Yes, it's the hardware casing. You can't just wish your way through a brick wall on plane 5.
No, plane 5 is where the bill comes due. It defines the hard reality.
Right.
So we've got the will, the story, the history, the possibility, and the matter. But how does it all run? We need an operating system.
Which brings us to plane 6, the logical plane.
The realm of count and consistency, this answers how.
Ideally, this is the debugger of reality. It senses structural integrity. The sources talk about a super tautology, a system that ensures internal consistency.
Super tautology sounds like a tongue twister.
It just means it checks the math. It answers, how does this work? It looks at the syntax of reality and makes sure 2 + 2 = 4 if the logic doesn't hold.
The code breaks.
The code breaks, so it's the syntax checker.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Even if the code works, even if the math is perfect, does it matter? That's the final plane, isn't it? Plane 7.
The emotive plane.
The realm of passion and consequence. This answers, what is the effect?
You know, usually when people talk about logic versus emotion, they treat emotion like it's this fluffy, irrational thing.
Yeah, like it's the opposite of data.
Right. Don't get emotional. Look at the facts.
But this source material treats plane 7 like a piece of high-tech equipment. It calls the emotive plane the hardware monitor.
The hardware monitor, or the heat of the system.
The heat. Think about your laptop. When the processor works too hard, what happens?
It gets hot. The fans spin up.
Exactly. When a structural beam in a bridge is bearing too much weight, it experiences strain. The source uses the physics symbol sigma for this, strain.
So emotion isn't just a feeling.
It is the raw detection of resistance or friction in your reality.
So pain isn't just a bad feeling. It's a dashboard light, a warning.
Yes. Pain, joy, gravity, levity. These are the conversions of abstract data into felt consequence. It's how you know if the other 6 planes are aligned or not.
If you're feeling heat, it means there's friction somewhere higher up in the stack.
Precisely.
This is where the model gets really useful for me, because we aren't just hovering on one of these planes, we're doing all of them all at once.
The source calls the soul a concentric hyperlotus, which is a mouthful.
It is.
But it just means it's a complex interference pattern created by these 7 planes interacting in the same space.
And when those patterns don't line up, that's where the suffering comes from. There's a specific intersection in the notes called the emotive historical glitch.
Ah, yes, otherwise known as the grudge.
Or nostalgia. But let's look at the grudge, because this explains that exhaustion we talked about in the intro. So walk us through the mechanics. Why is a grudge a system error?
Well, look at the stack. The historical plane, plane 3, is the record of what happened, the cause.
Okay.
The emotive plane, plane 7, is the effect, the heat.
Right.
Let's say someone insulted you 10 years ago. Historically, that event is over. Physically,
Yeah.
it doesn't exist. The coordinates are empty.
But I'm still angry. I'm still replaying it in the shower.
You are feeling the heat. That's plane 7, a cause from plane 3 that is no longer receiving power. The source calls this emotional time travel.
You're forcing your system to process data that isn't there anymore.
And that's why it's so exhausting. You're running a high-intensity graphics program on a file that's already been deleted.
You are burning energy, keeping a ghost alive.
Yes, you are feeling the pain of a past cause, what they call $T, as if it is happening right now. At $T's mind, it's a temporal error.
That explains so much. And there's another error here that I think everyone will recognize, the weighing error.
This is why arguments on the internet and at the dinner table never, ever work.
It's the zoom in, zoom out problem.
Right. The source gives an example, comparing theft with starvation.
Okay, so person A says theft is wrong.
That is a plane 1 or a plane 6 statement. It's a binary law, a universal rule. Theft equals false.
And person B says But this child is starving.
That is a level 3 contextual parameter. It's a specific story.
So person A is shouting about the law, and person B is shouting about the story.
And they are both right on their own planes, but they are completely wrong relative to each other. The error is trying to weigh a whole law against a specific condition without adjusting the scale.
You have to match the zoom.
Exactly. You have to either zoom in, is this specific theft wrong given the starvation, or zoom out, is theft a valid way to run an economy generally if you don't match the scales?
You aren't communicating, you're just making noise.
You're just making noise.
It really emphasizes that meaning is a calculation. The source actually gives a formula for it, doesn't it?
It does, meaning equals word times the objective frame times the subjective state.
So meaning word times omega times sigma.
It's mathematical. If you change the subjective state, your plane 7 emotion, the meaning of the word changes. If you change the objective frame, the plane 3 context, the meaning changes.
So if you're confused or conflicted, it's not magic. It's a math error in your stack.
It restores agency. You can debug your own life.
Speaking of debugging, I want to touch on one more concept before we wrap, the boot sequence. Because we talk about these planes like they are static layers, but they aren't.
No, they are active. We tend to think of creation as a timeline. First there was light, then matter, then us. But the source argues that a day of creation isn't a unit of time. It's a command.
A command.
Like hitting enter on a keyboard. It executes across all 6 planes simultaneously. Physical, emotional, historical.
Yep.
All of them fire at once, and they are validated by the 7th. It's a fractal genesis.
So reality is constantly booting up around us.
In 42 instance, according to the source. But that might be a deep dive for another day.
Fair enough. But if reality is constantly booting up, the system eventually has to crash or reboot.
And this brings us to the most radical part of these notes, the concept of death.
Usually we view death as the ultimate bug. The blue screen of death, the system failed.
Right. But vector field theory argues that death is actually a feature.
A feature.
It's a feature because that closed loop of I am me and you are you, eventually becomes a limitation. It's a container that gets too small. If you want to expand, you have to break the container.
So the death algorithm isn't just about the body, rotting.
No. The source lists 7 different types of death, corresponding to the 7 planes. You have physical death entropy. That's the hardware recycling itself. But what about historical death?
That would be being forgotten.
Obscurity. The death of ego, when you no longer need to be the main character of the timeline.
And the big one at the top, metaphysical death.
That is called kenosis.
The gnosis. That's a Greek term, right?
It means self-emptying. It's the deletion of the user profile. The source uses the analogy of a drop of water returning to the ocean.
Okay, so the drop hits the ocean, it doesn't disappear.
Yeah. No, the water's still there, but it ceases to be a drop. It becomes the ocean. It becomes the system.
And the wild part is, the source says you shouldn't wait until your heart stops to do this.
That's the twist. The source speaks of the first resurrection. This is successfully executing this death algorithm while you are still physically alive.
A system wipe without turning off the power.
Exactly. Total integration. Achieving union. You are walking around, breathing, paying taxes, but internally, you have broken the closed loop of the ego.
You are connected to the open circuit.
You're operating as the ocean disguised as a drop. That's the goal.
That is a massive concept. But if we pull it back to our listener on the couch feeling exhausted, what's the practical takeaway here?
Check your stack.
Check your stack.
Ask yourself, am I trying to solve a lyrical problem, a need for meaning with physical objects? Am I buying things to fix a story?
Or am I feeling strain on plane 7 because I'm engaging in historical time travel from plane 3?
Exactly. Identify the plane. Debug the error.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave the listeners with one final thought from the source material that really stuck with me. We've been talking about the 7 planes, the map, but the texts hint at something beyond.
The 8th density.
The meta-multiverse.
The idea is that if the 7th plane is perfect equilibrium, understanding the map completely, then the 8th is what happens next. The source describes it as the new beginning.
And what happens in the new beginning?
It says that the consciousness that has mastered the 7 planes doesn't just observe the map anymore.
What does it do?
It becomes the creative principle for the next cycle.
You stop being the explorer and you become the map maker.
You become the logic for the next universe.
Something to mull over while you're stuck in traffic today.
Indeed.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the 7 planes of reality. We'll see you in the next dimension.
See you there.